Streaming. All right. Man, oh man, what's up? What is going on? All right. So we back again. It's in the early morning of 1/15/2021. A lot of stuff's been going on. I ain't been on in like a month and a half. And I'm about to jump into that right now because what I found out, what crystallized to me is that time is of the essence. And so we back again with the show. Where I left off the last time, I was working on NAAA commentary. I believe I was like on 13. And then I started talking about the shadow self. That's what it was. And so what happened, without making any excuses, I went and did some research on the shadow self because I knew a little bit, well, I thought I did anyway. You know how you think you know something, and then when you start researching into it, you find out you really don't know. Well, that's what was going on. So anyway, I did some research into the shadow self, to see what it was. And what I found out, man, is I had to do some more inventory work because the shadow self that I looked at was mine, right? And when we talk about recovery, we actually talking about ourselves. And when I say we, I mean me, mentally, physically, spiritually, and emotionally, right? So anyway, I went to this one lady on YouTube, and she's on the Diamond Network, and I forget her name, but she's really good, and I just want to give her a shout out, Anyway, then I went to the source of the theory. It's the shadow self theory, which is Carl Jung. And I started identifying with that, the shadow self. Now let me back up, in case somebody just happened to accidentally put me on, right? So I'm in my 35th year of recovery. I got 34 years and something like 5 months clean, sober, and in recovery. And I've done a lot of personal inventories, and I've done a little work on myself. And so I'm also striving for what? For more enlightenment, and also to mentally, physically, spiritually, and emotionally be enlightened and combining myself. And so anyway, getting back to this. Now the lady that I talked about, let me back up a little bit. She has a video out on lying to yourself. That's right. She got a video out on lying to yourself. And so in the course of researching the Jungian theory on the shadow self, I came across her video about lying to self, and I watched it. And of course, I identified with it. And if you're anybody in recovery, you know that you've been lying to yourself. And because you get some time in and, you do a lot of step work, sure, there's going to always be some progress. But because the recovery process is what a lot of people call the onion roll, you going through layers. And so with me is, and I'm saying this and so, man, because I'm hooked on it. So anyway, when I got to the part where about the lying to the self, And then I did some work on trauma. If you see some of my previous videos, and if you look up AANA commentary, Suni, S-U-N-I, Sami, you know, some of my videos will pop up, and I should have about 13, 14 out there. And so getting back to the step work part, what happened is I already knew that I had lied to myself, that I, you know, been lying to myself. That wasn't so much of a new thing to me. However, it was how much denial I was in about that. How about that? So anyway, I watched her video, identified with the line, and so I was like, okay, all right, Suni, where you at with this now today? Where are you with this lying to yourself today? Where are you with this? And so I got as honest as I could be with myself, and you know, I saw a lot of lies I was telling myself, man. And so going back a little bit farther, when I was working on the on my trauma series and how I use lies to help deal with my trauma. In other words, I was developing another personality to help deal with some of the traumatic situations that happened in my life. What I had did was, in my case, was directly relate traumatic events that initiated different personalities to deal with that trauma, to survive through trauma. Doing the shadow work and looking at previous inventories that I'd done, 4th and 5th steps that I'd done, what I found out is that I had developed alter personalities. When I looked up the word personality, what it found out was persona. The definition of persona came up, and it correct me if I'm wrong, somebody, and I know somebody will. What it had through the definition was a fake personality. In other words, the persona is the person that we present forward at first. So let's say you go on a job interview, or you meet a person and you want to establish a relationship with that person. You send your best person forward. You send the best version of you forward, or the best perceived version of you forward, even though that version could be, and I say could be, a fake person. But in actuality, it's not a fake person. That's a part of your shadow self. That's the part of that personality that you send forward, is the person that you have developed. You have developed to get certain things done. Yeah. Now, let me back up a little bit. Now, I can say it's debatable if it's a fake personality, but I'm going to say that in my mind it's not, because it's like a tool. Your personality is like a tool. It's like a tool that you use to get something done, and once that whatever it is you want to get done, you put that in the shelf. You put it back in the toolbox. Just like we have certain personalities that we have when we want to get something done. It's like being like when I was a kid, right? And I want my mama to do something, or my grandmother, or my father to do something. I would put on a persona. Yeah, I would put on a persona, and if I to get that goal achieve, or goal met. Thus, I've developed a shadow personality. Now, although there's a part of me, my quote unquote normal or standard personality that I carry, but only somebody that gets to know me, and I use that in italics, the person that gets to know me will see. Because what happens is some of us, because of the trauma that we live through, we have all different alter egos that step up. So let me back up and say, what is the shadow? The definition of shadow. And where's my device at? When I say device, I mean my phone, right? So the shadow personality is the personality that the individual creates. It's a created personality that we create as individuals to deal with certain situations. Now, I was under the impression a long time ago that the shadow personality was something that was bad. It was like my bad traits because it was what? Shadow. Because the word shadow was used. However, the shadow personality, in a nutshell, is not only our good qualities, but it's also bad qualities that we have about ourselves that we don't want the outer world to see. So we suppress them. So in other words, they could be in the recovery aspect, it could be character defects and shortcomings that we have suppressed that we don't want the outside world to see about ourselves. And then through the suppression of these character defects and shortcomings and positive attributes, which I forgot in the first to put in the first definition, and these positive attributes that we are trying to hide, that we suppress from the outside world, what eventually happens is they pop up anyway. So if I was a loving and caring person, but I don't want people to see me as such, I would suppress that. And during the suppression of that, of those character traits, what happens is they eventually what? Pop up. Now, when they pop up, they could be negative, they could be something positive. Well, how is this shadow self related to recovery? How's this in recovery? Now, being in recovery for so long, like I said, I've actually been in recovery for 35 years. Including that relapse, I lost a clean time somewhere along the line. But in recovery, being in the recovery process, I've been in there for like 35 years in a few days. January 3rd make 35 years that I've been in recovery. Right. Now, working with sponsors in the program and various other people, personalities in the program, this, I only worked on the stuff that was like most obvious in my inventories. Looking at, like character defects, shortcomings, my positive, my positive what do we call it? Character defects and shortcomings, my assets. When I say worked on them, I mean anywhere from listing them to actually getting into the mechanics, how they work, how they develop. So why is this? So let's step back and look at why this is important. Because what happens, what I'm beginning to see, now remember, and let me back up a little bit. I said my ultimate goal for me in recovery was enlightenment, whatever that means to me. And if it means the same thing for you, fine. But I'm not going to get off into that. Yes, I am. Enlightenment means to me my ability to look at things the way they are and not the way I want them to be. So that would be the basis of how I am going to come at this. So let's move back a little bit. Inside the shadow self, okay, let me kind of like back up a little bit. There's a saying in one of the fellowships. It says, compare and don't identify. It says, don't compare, identify. It said, don't compare myself with other people, identify. In one of the books, it says, an attitude of intolerance or indifference could what? Defeat us in our recovery. An attitude of indifference or intolerance, what, towards spiritual principles, can defeat us in our recovery. And if I hold up, I got my book right here. Let me quote it right. Hold up. Yeah. All right. So let me flip to this page because I think this part is kind of like very, very important. And right here, it says right here, there's one thing more than anything else that would defeat us in our recovery. This is an attitude of intolerance or indifference towards spiritual principles. Three of these that are indispensable are honesty, open-mindedness, and willingness. With these, we are well on our way. And then it says the part where if I don't think that this program could work for me like it's worked for others, then I'm going to have a problem. And I'm paraphrasing that. However, I need to get on if I get sidetracked. And that's something I'm not trying to do. So anyway, moving on. Identifying myself or identifying my shadow traits. One of the processes that I kind of like found out about is that the individual must identify with through the process of what is called projection. And projection is very simply what I see in another person. So, let me drink my cold tea right here. This tea is really cold. Start off warm. Projection is basically, so let's say me and one of my close associates is having a little spat, and I say, well, you're a liar and a manipulator, and you also tend to not look at things realistically. However, you do have a tendency of being resilient. What I just did is took that person's inventory through identification. In the fellowship, we say, if you spot it, you got it. Projection made sense to me using that analogy. Yes, it did. You spot it, you got it. So what I had to do was, for me, is stop lying to myself. How am I going to know something about something or somebody, number one, if I don't have some type of a experience with it? That's all I'm going to say. I have to have some type of experience with that. If I call you a liar, I must have to have some type of experience with lying. The best experience is what? Personal experience. That's the best experience, right? So, building my shadow inventory based on identification, personal identification, and then looking at myself honestly as possible, I began to put certain things together. And what happened was my recovery started slowly going, nudgingly to the next level. Now, one thing I learned about in my past 3-4 weeks of doing this shadow work, one of the suggestions said, don't, what it said, it says, while you're doing this work, don't judge people. And it took me back to a saying that we have in the fellowship, is that people who judge don't matter, and people who don't judge matter. Something like that, you know. So that like came to my mind. So let's move on. So in the past couple of weeks, you know, I've been doing a little shadow inventory, and I've been like sitting down. I've been looking at myself and those around me, because one thing I see about the shadow work inventory, it's like you need people around you. I mean, well, I ain't gonna say you need, but the people around you, if you got some around you, that's your best asset, especially if you're not going to be condemning, you know. The flip side of that is, number one, if people know what you're doing, it might be a little hard on them. That's all I'm gonna say. Because if they know what you're doing, then it's like being in recovery and getting clean. People will tend to, you know, when they see you getting clean and straighten your life up, and you know, and trying to seek some to be a quote unquote productive member of society, what happens is they begin to look at themselves, and then they begin to project. However, it may not, their projections of themselves on you may not come out like yours on them. And, you know, they may look at you more condemningly or judgingly, as if you're judging them. And so all type of defense mechanisms could come up, especially if it's like your one of your mellows that you hang around with every day, or your mate or something like that. So that could put the individual that's doing the work, that's doing the shadow work, that could put them in a situation. So it's going to be depending on how you deal with that, right? So even moving on, why is this shadow work so important to recovery? So I went to an old timer older than me. That actually who I had first heard use this term some 25 years ago in recovery. And I'm not going to say Mike Johnson's name out of Detroit. I am not going to say his name. what happened was he was the first person that I heard say it. Now, the reason why I say it had to been at least 25 years ago is because I've been here in Indianapolis for 16. And I know it wasn't since I've been here. So I got introduced to him when I had 3 years clean. So I'm gonna say between 3 and 5 years, I had to hear him say it between 3 to 5 years, because I was with my first wife, and I'm not gonna mention Tanya's name. What's happening, Tanya? So anyway, let's keep it moving. So anyway, now that I'm doing this shadow work, what's happening is through identification, a lot of my inventory that I've done work on the trauma that I talked about in earlier videos, which I'm not going to really get off into, to like what is trauma and so forth and so forth. But long story short is, I identify with trauma that has happened, especially in the youthful ages of the individual or the recovering person. I identify that trauma as the building blocks for addiction. In one of my videos I call the coming of the darkness. And what the darkness is, the resentment, the angers, and the fear that comes along with traumatic situations, which actually develop as part of the development of the shadow self. And if the shadow self is not addressed at some point in recovery, then the recovering person is not being, well, it's affecting their vigilance. And then at some point, the what we call recovery, when a person has been in recovery for a while, and you know, you done got all your degrees, you done got your house, you done got your kids back, you know, you done saved up a bunch of money, and you done got your business going on. However, you have not addressed that what self-acceptance called the inner gnawing. You still haven't addressed that, because you kept filling that void with quote unquote material success instead of working on the spiritual part of the individual that never goes anywhere. And then what happens is at some points, and I've been there plenty of times, what happens is at some point the individual still comes face to face with what? The books, both books, all books say yourself. And who's that self? The shadow self. That's who that self is. That other part that we tend to suppress and even deny. And that's where the line line to self comes about. The part we tend to deny, because we don't want to look at, especially when you attend to mass fortunes, fame, prestige. And I think in one of the books, it says that one of our inherent one of the inherent enemies of the recovering person is success. We have to be very well aware of our successes. And I believe part of that awareness is that as we become more quote unquote successful or start achieving things or gaining things, and of course we're going to give up some stuff, different voids are created, and then that shadow self that have been suppressed. As things start, we start resolving issues. At some point, we don't deal with the shadow self. And when we don't deal with the shadow self, what happens is we're not being vigilant in recovery. And when you're not being vigilant in recovery, guess what's just around the corner? Jails, institutions, dereliction, and death. Right. When I start focusing on the me. So what I found out in the past month and doing the inventories and, you know, talking to a lot of old timers, and I say old timers older than me. So we talking about people 40 years, 45 years, people doing inventories and still watching the deaths that has been occurred with, you know, people like 10, 15 years, who had the degrees, got the money. Like I went to a funeral today from a dude that I seen, man, he got a bachelor's degree, got a master's degree, started him a business, started making that money, and then ended up in the hotel dead. 40 years old. 40 years old, man. And then I had talked to this guy a while back. And we was talking about the success, you know. And that's all I'm gonna say about that. Because I got a lot of respect for this brother. But anyway, this has happened time and time again. But a lot of us, we want to look at the success part and we deal with resolving issues that leads to success and suppress the shadow self, therefore lying to ourselves, and then we end up in the relapse process, because we all know that relapse is a process. It's not an event. You just don't relapse, especially if you've been around. If you done got 3 years or more clean and you've been working on yourself, it just don't happen like that. We set our own selves up by what? Denying the reality of what is. Instead of we go to what's supposed to be, and we've been warned plenty of times to stay up out of that. That's not for the recovering person. So basically what I'm saying is suppression of the shadow self, when the voids come up as a result of successes, and success for me may be different for you. Success for you might be amassing degrees, money, and wealth. Success for me is working on them character defects and shortcomings. And if I can get a day with a place to sleep and some food and a couple of dollars in my pocket, I'm all right. I mean, that's the way I look at it. But that's not to say that I haven't done some of that, achieved some of those things I just mentioned. You know, I do understand that me personally, I must stay into the what? Into the here and now, look at it as it is, and then as my character defects and my shortcomings and my assets become apparent, embrace them. Because, and I remember growing up, right? And I used to talk, I guess, proper. I don't know where the hell that went. And the boys and the girls in the neighborhood, you know, they would tease me, but you talk like a white person. Which was really an asset. Or I would be in school and the teacher said, I want him to read, because I read very well. You know, I was reading like comic books, Spider-Man, Batman, Marvel Comics, DC. You know. So at a young age, so when I got to school back in the 60s, And I was a reading dude. You know, I was one of the few that read. You know, Kirkhead, Brooks Godfrey, and to name a few. You know, they all called on us to read a lot of time. But because we got talked about, I ain't gonna talk about them, because I got talked about, I ain't want to read no more. And I wore glasses. Oh, still do. So what I'm trying to say is that being a person that applied themselves wasn't really acceptable when I was coming up. You know, you really got talked about. And I understand a lot of that goes on today. So what I had to do was learn how to reapply myself. So I had to look into the things that I had pushed down into my shadow. Now let me say this. When I pushed those assets down, what happened was when I suppressed them, a negative me came up. You know, I wanted to be something like that I wasn't. You know what I mean? Yeah. I wanted to be something that I wasn't. So, that being said, I'm about to add something on here. That being said was audio capture. And that being said was you know, I developed like different types of personalities, and put names on them. You know, I put a name on that personality. And as a result, went deeper into darkness. You know. So this shadow self is really, really important. And I would like to urge anybody to dive into that, especially if you're in recovery, because it's not going to go anywhere. And I know some of us do the work. We do this work. We do the work. You know, we do this work. We do this work, and we do it unconsciously. Because what I found out when I start consciously moving into doing the shadow work to bring my shadow personality up, and I went to the old timer and I asked him, I said, well, you know, what's the deal on this here shadow work? And he said fourth step. No, he said fifth step. That's your fifth step right there. That's your fifth step. And then, of course, I put my little spin on it. And my little spin was, yep, not only is it fifth step work, you know, you got to have a fourth step. So it's fourth, fifth step, and then through the naming of it, the seventh step popped up. Then the eighth step popped up. And then I realized that I needed some help. Then I realized that it would be insane not to do it as a result of the insanity that I was already practicing. Right. And how I was powerless over a lot of unmanageability in my life because I did number one, and I'm gonna show you the mercy that the laws, that the universal laws that we practice have on us, on me anyway, is that a lot of the stuff I was doing, but I didn't know I was doing. That's how I was getting my daily reprieve. Yeah. So anyway, I'm about to wrap this up, and I hope this video came out right, because if it didn't, I'm going to have to do it over. And I will do it over. So I'm going to be on this shadow work thing because what I want to do is I actually want to do some step work on it and post it on YouTube. So now I want to address a couple things right quick before I jump off, because it's like going on 1:30. Recovery is personal. Recovery is personal. Me as a recovering personal individual, I can't apply principles to nobody else's life but mine. Because I be hearing people, make comments, about what other recovering addicts be saying. I know a lot of us come under attack because, William R., one of my sponsors back in Detroit, I had a long time ago, about 25 years ago. He said, you're going to come under attack. You're going to come under attack. And by me being a loyal follower of him, I was like, all right, yeah, So I'm going to the rooms. And I would get attacked in the rooms. But what I found out too, it's going to be more than the rooms when you're in recovery. Because what happens in the recovery process is, as you get, quote unquote, let me do that like that. As you get, quote unquote, better, what happens is that people will tend to project themselves on you, and they will look at what type of person you should be and supposed to be, and and it's not like that. The only person I'm responsible for in my recovery is me, ish, like they say in Germany, ish. Ich, not ish. It depends. If you're in the north, it's ich. If you're in the south, it's ish. Yeah, man. So, the next thing is being in recovery, man, can be very, very isolating. Very isolating. Yeah, so, and I say that because as a result of, being in recovery and, people hear about the stuff I talk about, or, they want to project themselves back on the recovering person. So therefore you have to be vigilant and stern. And I will always say this, and I'm not going to stop saying this. You need a recovery goal. That's right. If you're in recovery, you should have a recovery goal. And what that recovery goal should be, what do you want out of recovery? And it has to be more than a house, a car, some kids, some money, some bank account, and some traveling. It better be. Because when you achieve that, and it will be achieved if you are persistent, you better be talking about having some mental stability and some spiritual growth. Therefore, you're going to need some acceptance, and a lot of the resentment, the anger, and the fear has to go. And I want to read something. I'm reaching for some material. And when I talk about resentment, anger, and fear, Now I want to read something right quick before I go. Resentment is the way most of us react to our past. It is the reliving of past experiences again and again in our minds. Anger is the way most of us deal with the present. It is our reaction to and denial of reality. Fear is what we feel when we think about the future. It is our response to the unknown, a fantasy in reverse. And before I jump off, I like to go over just these three behaviors. Anger is the way most of us deal with the present. Anger, it says, wait a minute. Anger is the way most of us deal with the present. It is our reaction to and denial of reality. So I'm going to say this, right? Reality is obvious. And I know, like, people want to put a spin on it and say, you know, there's different powers at work that can make the individual see something or think something and da-da-da-da-da. However, I'll say this. Just like recovery is my responsibility, it's my responsibility to figure out what's real and what ain't real. And when I say my responsibility, it's not another person telling me what's real. It's me having to go through the work and say, okay, go through the tests, the trials of what's real, man. Because, yeah, I mean, anybody could be deceived. But also, that deception is going to come from me. It ain't going to come from nobody. At the end of the day, deception is going to come from me. You can tell me all the lies you want, show me all of the YouTube videos and pictures and books that you want to. But at the end of the day, I know what's real. Because part of being deceived is me wanting to be deceived. And a lot of times I'm going to have to let go of, usually when I've been deceived about something, I had a stake in it. And let me tell you what the stake. It was something that I wanted out of that made that perception seem real of what was being presented to me. So I have to look at my investments and take that off the table, man, and say, okay, let's if I ain't getting nothing up out of this, because if you ain't got nothing to lose, man. The next part is fear. Fear is what we think about, is when we think about the future. It is our response to a fantasy in reverse. Fear is our response to a fantasy in reverse. What is a fantasy in reverse? What's a fantasy in reverse? For me is, for example, when I want something, and I want something so much I start fantasizing about it. I'm fantasizing. All I'm doing is I'm dreaming about it in my sleep. I'm walking about it. I'm walking around daydreaming it in the day. I'm projecting it to others. And it starts with these words. What if? What if? When I, if only, it's gonna, These are projections. And sure, they could be based on some type of reality. But until it happens, these are just projections. And now at this point, what I have to do, and I'm talking about a person in recovery, what I have to do is look at how much of reality am I looking at these things with? What am I basing it on? Right? What am I basing this stuff? What am I basing my projections on? Am I basing it on desires? Vain desires? Or am I basing it on something concrete? Something that other people have achieved that I could draw off their experience? Because if ain't nobody achieved it and ain't nobody bought it, 9 times out of 10, and I'm talking about me, I'm going off of a vain desire. Can't nobody touch it. Ain't nobody touched it. Ain't nobody smelled it. Ain't nobody tasted it. Ain't nobody felt it. So I have to look out for me, the way I think. Because I remember, in my camp, I can be my own worst enemy, or I could be my most valuable asset. Feel me though? I'm gonna wrap this up with this one. It says, resentment is the way most of us react to our past. It is the reliving of past experiences again and again in our minds. And I want to add to that, as if it happened today or yesterday. The reliving of past experiences in our minds. Sounds like a mental illness to me. Because I have been one to relive past experiences, bad ones, in my mind like it just happened. And what happened was, in resentment mode, is I began to eat my own self up. Spiritually, mentally, emotionally. And then it results physically. Cancer, diabetes, what other physical ailments that can come from? High blood pressure, overweight. All this can come off of a resentment. All this can come off of the things I just mentioned, of denial of reality, not accepting my past, not accepting my present, and afraid to go into the future. And a lot of this is tied to what? The shadow self, because when you take the inventory, your own inventory and not mine, but if you want to take mine, sign your name at the bottom. We used to say that a long time ago. So when we look at the inventory, what should happen is, if you want to take that inventory, you have to look at all you. I have to look at all me. And in short, this is the reason why I want to say people go out. People go out. People die. People die. I was looking at the triangle self-obsession. You know, that's what I just talked about. The triangle being obsessed with self. So it took me a minute to get back on here, you know, and wrapping this up, because I gotta get up, go to work, and I'm back. I'll be putting out another video soon, Monday, because I'm in this shadow work thing, and like I said, I'm striving for wholeness. I'm striving for more clarity. I'm striving for enlightenment, and also to merge or submission, for more submission to the highest power. Yeah. All right, so I'd like to thank y'all for paying attention, for listening. It's been real. I'm back again. I had to get my rig back up. I had tore it all apart, and man, and I went through some depression. Had to add that too, right? You know, but I'm here another day. So anyway, I'd like to say thank y'all for listening. My goal is not to get 1 million subscribers. This is really for me, and I'm putting this on. This is really for me. Yeah. All right, thank you.